Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. A little bit under the weather today, but we're going to do the best we can. We have to overcome. There is adversity in life. Sometimes you just don't feel well. Took some NyQuil last night, knocked most of this out, but nevertheless, I don't know if we go the full 90 minutes. We'll see. Depends on how I'm feeling. But I hope that you guys are doing well and far from harm and illness and all the things that go along with that, pestilence, whatever it is. Hope that everything in your life is just absolutely peachy. A lot to talk about today. Some rule changes as it affects college athletics. Of course, some big news from Coach Jeff Lebby yesterday in relation to some injury type stuff. We'll get over that, kind of our first segment of the show. We've got another open date top 10 list. And again, we'll kind of embrace some of these rule changes and kind of explain them. Because if you're on the go, and I know many of you are, you don't have time to stop and read a whole lot. I mean, because reading, we do 10 stories a day at a minimum. Just reading our stuff takes up a lot of your time. So sometimes you need somebody when you've got a little peace and quiet to kind of explain what's happening in college athletics. And here I am. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of the show. We love Bulldog Burger Company. We've loved them for a long, long time. They bring so much to our community too, man. They really do. And I suspect if you got the kids in the car and said, hey, where would you like to go for dinner? Bulldog Burger Company is probably going to be their top choice. And why? Because there's just so much to choose from. You go there for the burgers, and maybe you stay for the fries. But you need those onion rings from time to time just to kind of keep things interesting. And you need those spring rolls as part of your beauty care regimen. Bulldog Burger Company has so many great options to choose from, whether it be the pimentology, add bacon, which is the only way to fly, or you get the Bulldog itself. You can never go wrong just ordering the Bulldog. Like the rest of your life, you would still feel like your life had been fulfilled, right? If you're not feeling a burger today, but everybody else is, enjoy the BLT salad. I prefer it grilled. You may like it fried. No matter how you get it, I recommend ranch dressing. Don't kid yourself. Enjoy life as best you can. Bulldog Burger Company is part of my life enjoyment plan. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T, and I'd be remiss, as the youngest was recently recognized for his 3-year anniversary of working at Bulldog Burger Company. Seems like just yesterday that he got a job up there. And he loves it, man. He does. He talks about it all the time. That's his family. He sees them more than he sees his real family. And he lives like half a block away, right there in the heart of the Cotton District. I was telling the bride earlier today, I said, isn't it cool to think that our youngest son lives in the heart of the Cotton District? It's a cool thing. I mean, it's a Mississippi State deal, right? I mean, it's a landmark, and I think it's a cool thing that he'd be able to say that. And so easy for him, easy to get to work, easy to get to school. So many great things happening, and super proud of him, man. Super proud of that kid. And so many of you have gone in and requested to sit in his section. That means a lot to me. And to him, and I get the reports. He'll text me. He goes, hey, Daddy, I'm waiting on this family, and the dad said they listened to you on the Boneyard, or this guy came and this lady came, and they got your books, and kind of figured out who I was. He's the most handsome kid there, so it's easy to kind of pick him out. But, I'm proud of that kid, man. I am. I'm proud of all my kids. But Ian kind of kept me young. You know what I'm saying? It's like we started out, and we wanted 4 kids. That was the plan. We're going to have 4 kids. And then after we got Mia home, she was number 3. And I think Dana and I both kind of felt like, you know what, this is probably enough. This is it. I mean, my life is fulfilled. Because once you have 3 kids, you have to go from man to man to zone defense in your house. Got to make sure somebody's not spilling a drink or making a mess somewhere. I mean, things change. And we had Ian, so my boys are 10 years apart, and they're still very close, even though they're not close in age. And that's important to me. But I can tell you, man, I felt like in my 30s I got old. I was just the guy paying for everything. And then Ian came along, and I think he kept me young. Gave me a chance to coach youth sports again, and, and a guy I could go to concerts with and ball games with and things like that. And I'm very grateful that he came along. Very, very, very grateful that he is a part of my life. And again, super proud of him. All right, let's jump into the business side of things. Obviously, Fluff Bothwell, so let me give you the timeline. Okay, so Saturday night when we were in College Station, even the folks at A&M, and of course they're speaking unofficially, right? I mean, it's just conversation in passing, it didn't look good. Didn't look good for Fluff. Didn't look good. We get to the locker room, and there's Fluff's parents are down there, and why wouldn't they be, right? I mean, they've seen their son get carted off and be all emotional on the field. And then on Sunday, not many people wanted to talk, and I kind of found out why later. It's just that they had to go through the testing process. They had to go through and get him evaluated. And so on Tuesday, I guess back up Monday, I began to get some information that, hey, it may not be as bad as we first thought. He's going to miss some time, but it may not be as bad as we thought, and certainly does not appear to be season ending. And then on Tuesday, we spoke to Jeff Lebby, and right out of the gate, I thought he would just kind of do an opening statement, but, he knew that question was coming. I mean, Jeff's been around, and comes out and says, yeah, we don't think it's season ending. All the images came back very positive. I'm very proud of our group, too. We had this information ready to go, not because of any vanity purposes. We knew that all of you were kind of waiting with bated breath to hear something from Mississippi State. Listen, when I report it, I believe there is validity to it in the eyes of many. But I'm going to be honest. You guys want to hear it from Jeff Lebby, right? And so we pre-wrote the story based on the information we had from our sources. We just kind of needed to get a quote from Jeff. And so I'm sitting there trying to video as Leb is talking, and I went ahead and tweeted it out because we wanted you guys to know as soon as possible. Period. And then you see basically nationally, like if you see my mentions, you got all these other fans of other teams around the SEC. And let me share with you guys a couple things. When I'm getting ready to get back to work at A&M after some kind of an emotional postgame, and maybe not so much with what Leb said, but kind of what we saw and what we feared. And I had a couple people that I know at A&M that pulled me aside when they saw me and said, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you we're praying for Fluff. We're praying for Fluff. You hate to see that for any kid. You hate to see it." Got messages from other people too, kind of around the conference, kind of saying the same thing because they were all kind of feeling the same things we were, right? And you never want that for a young person, especially a guy like Fluff that has played so hard, and all of a sudden he's emerging as a star in the SEC. But a lot of comments yesterday from people around this conference. Once the news was out from Lebby that he wasn't done, that it reminds me, that as much as we like to beat each other, there's one school in particular we don't really care, but there really is a family in the Southeastern Conference. There truly is. And so I wanted to share that with you. A lot of well-wishers in a lot of rival schools around this league had Mississippi State and certainly Fluff Bothwell in their minds and hearts. It's a great thing. Now, Leb also mentioned Albert Reese. We do expect him back for Florida. Now, coaches especially, I've noticed this about Leb too. He's a little more on the cautious side. Some guys don't want to talk about injuries at all, but everything that we're hearing is that we do expect Reese back. Isaac Smith, that situation still kind of touch and go. They'll hopefully get into tomorrow and have a pretty good idea where things stand with him. But he was in a boot at A&M, so getting those guys back for the home stretch is big. And that's the thing I think about too, is even if Isaac has to miss the Florida game to get him right for the last 5, then that's probably the way to go. I thought Tony Mitchell played pretty well. And he's not Isaac Smith, but I thought Tony played well. So there's some benefit in that aspect of it too. But it does appear at the halfway point with these notable injuries kind of in the headlines, the state is in good shape. And I think that says a lot about the strength and conditioning program, and also to just having a little bit of luck. Football is a very physical game. A lot of things happen out there. But this is a good time for an open date. And, we spoke to Brennan Thompson. He said he's going to be on the water, kind of do some fishing, kind of get out there in his new boat, and just kind of get away from football for a while. Leb did say they're going to basically turn everybody loose. The coaches are going to be out recruiting, going to junior college games, and, of course, going to some high school games this weekend. They're going to take full advantage of an open date as part of the evaluation period. It never ends. Yeah, it never, ever, ever, ever ends. I know for me, I'm going to watch a lot of college football this weekend. Going to go see a high school game Friday night. We're going to shut it down and just kind of enjoy college football, for a while on Saturday. We don't get to do that a lot. You know what I mean? And that's not in any way being ungrateful. That's one of the reasons I think the AP poll is just fraudulent, because the only game you really get to see and evaluate is the one you're covering. That's just how it works, because there's a lot of travel involved and getting checked in and things like that, and there's a fair share of hobnobbing and things like that. But, we'll sit and watch some games while we're eating, but a lot of that stuff is not real evaluation. But it's very difficult to be an AP voter. I think it's a process that probably needs to be reexamined. But all of that understood, we have a playoff now. And so you don't have pollsters picking a national champion like we did for decades. It'll be determined on the field. And one of the things that I like to ask myself is, how far are we away from making the playoff? Not specifically this year, but just as a program. Now, it feels like some of you right now are doing Jim Mora, the playoffs. Yeah. I don't think State's a playoff team this year. But with the expanded playoff, you kind of begin to ask yourself, how many times have we actually been there, or what would be considered, top 12 or so? And not very many, and that's really the steps that you have to take in many respects to try to be relevant on the national stage when it comes to recruiting. And so what's the answer there? Well, the thing that I think what life has shown us in college football the last few years, I ran the numbers on this and it got to be too much to keep up with, but 2 years ago, I ran the portal numbers of the SEC. And the two teams that had the highest number of portal attrition in the Southeastern Conference was Auburn and Mississippi State. Now, what did those two schools have in common? Multiple coaching changes during a very short period of time. And so you're going to have a ton of roster attrition when you change coaches. And again, I think, we're 4-2 right now. We could argue we should be 5-1. We shouldn't have won the A&M game. I'm okay. We should have been more competitive, but they're better than us. I don't know that Tennessee in Starkville is that much better than us. We should have won the game. I think you guys agree. But I don't think we're as far off as maybe some people would suggest. We have to keep moving forward. And so I guess really what my point in all of this is that we can't have this reactionary, reflexive response, pardon the alliteration, every time we have a little bit of adversity. We're 4-1 headed to A&M. In the beginning of the year, most of us said, that's probably a loss. And then you get the loss, and then we kind of react over the top a bit. But I don't think another coaching change is going to change anything. I think, if anything, it puts us further back. Because the next thing you know, a bunch of guys go get in the portal. Then you got to go get some other guys. And as you saw 2 years ago when Levy got here, a lot of those guys that you get when you're having to kind of grind it out in about a 6-week time, sometimes you make a lot of mistakes. You don't have the same hit rate as a first-time coach than you would as a second, third, fourth, or fifth-year coach. You got to keep your nucleus in place, and you got to be able to add some players to kind of supplement what you already have. You got to have people that fill needs. When you're a new coach, you don't truly know what the needs are. You think you do. You watch some tape, but you don't know how guys are going to practice. You don't know how they're going to take coaching. I mean, I take a good example. Nick Mitchell, right? Nick Mitchell was a career special teams guy. And then we make a change, and Coleman Hutzler comes in, and all of a sudden Nick Mitchell has new life. And Nick Mitchell becomes a starter at Mississippi State. Now, if Zach Arnett is still here, let's just assume Zach Arnett was able to hire Kendall Briles, and he could just kind of focus on overall team management and defense. Is it reasonable to think that Arnett would have got 3 years or so? Probably, yeah. But maybe, and I don't know this for sure, but maybe Zach Arnett didn't just see a lot of potential in Nick Mitchell. And so Nick hung around because he likes it here, and he's become one of our most productive defenders. But I suspect when Coleman Hutzler and Jeff Lebby sat down to watch the Mississippi State defensive film, Nick Mitchell's name did not flash before their eyes. You had to get him into practice. You had to get him into meetings. And all of a sudden, he begins to have new life with a new defensive staff. And so those are the things that I think about. Like when Nick Mitchell, listen, Nick's not a star, but Nick is a very solid contributor to this defense. And in most situations, in most coaching change type things, Nick Mitchell probably doesn't stay. But he did. And didn't have a lot on film to sell himself. But then now I look back now and I kind of wonder, where would we be without Nick Mitchell? And it's pretty easy to see and demonstrate that this defensive team has gotten much, much better. It was around this time last year, many people within the Mississippi State fan base were calling for Coleman Hutzler's head. And you know what? Rightfully so, in many respects. And that's the reality of it, right, is you don't blame the grocer for a bad meal. You blame the chef, right? You go sit down and eat. You don't want to hear about their suppliers. All I know is that you cooked a meal and it wasn't great. And so I began to ask questions, and people were like, you know what? No, Love's going to stand on the table for Hutzler. He's going to keep bringing him back. We're going to bring him back. I started putting that out there. Bo Bounds and I had a bet, and I still have not gotten my free steak out of this thing. I need to hold his feet to the fire on that. I said he's not going to be fired. And he wasn't. And now you look a year later, now you've got a defense that I think that you're proud of. I go back and think about really how the offense let the defense down at A&M. Defense was outstanding for 2.5 quarters, and they just kind of gassed out. I mean, you can't expect those guys to keep playing and playing and playing and playing, and keep getting the same results. At some point, it just kind of happens. At some point you get tired. That's just how life is. And we have more depth. Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do. But offense got to do their part. And so, I'm not saying Coleman Hutzler is going to run for governor or anything. But I think some people maybe are kind of beginning to realize, you know what, maybe he's not as bad as the numbers suggested last year. Maybe that's the case. I think that's probably fair. Of course, you do some other things. You go out and you get some players. You increase your talent level. And in addition to that, you bring in some people to kind of help. You just kind of looking here. It's scoring defense. Guys, we're giving up 19.8 points per game. If you hold an SEC team in the teens, you got a really good chance to win that game. You do. And listen, and that didn't even put us in the top half of the league. But compared to where we were last year, it's pretty remarkable. And I don't know if you guys remember this. And if not, I'll remind you as we pull the numbers up right here. In 2024, we were giving up 34.1 points per game. 34. So you've cut it down by more than 2 touchdowns. And granted, we got some more SEC teams to play, don't get me wrong. But the reality of it is apparent that this defense is getting better. And I think you gotta give Jeff Labby a lot of credit for just kind of sticking to his guns a little bit and saying, you know what, hey, I believe in my guy. You know, it would have been so easy for Jeff Labby to just kind of throw Coleman Hutzler under the bus to make himself look better and say, you know what, guys, I made the wrong hire. He didn't do that. Good leaders don't go out and conduct an opinion poll. Now, looking at our yards per game this year, State's given up 334 yards a game. And that's not even in the top half. Now, some of that, too, of course, you know, SEC play has been a little more difficult for us. But we're doing a better job than Ole Miss, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas. Arkansas giving up 425. But your Bulldogs, 334 defensive yards a game. Last year, it was 456 per game. It's pretty remarkable to think about that aspect of it. How much you've cut down scoring and how you've cut down, yards per game. And so I say that as kind of evidence that, maybe, just maybe, Jeff Labby knows what he's doing. And I think that's one of those things that people, when you get out of the emotional moment, like when we're losing, man, everything is rotten. It is. Even for me, and I've covered hundreds of games over the years, but it's like, I hate it when Mississippi State's not playing well. I hate it when Mississippi State is losing. And it's got nothing to do with Twitter mentions or anything like that. I love Mississippi State. I want Mississippi State to do well. I want you to be happy too. I want our local vendors to be able to sell out of their stock and have a big Christmas because you guys are excited about the direction of Mississippi State football and you want to buy bowl tickets and you want to buy bowl shirts and you want to get new jackets with the Mississippi State logo on it because you're proud of Mississippi State. All that stuff kind of rolls through my mind from time to time. What's best for Starkville? Well, what's best for Starkville is for Mississippi State to be successful. I got a lot of neighbors in small business. I want them to be successful too. I don't want them to have a hard candy Christmas. And so all of that factors in to my line of thinking when we're getting beat. And there are times I'll turn to Mike Nemeth or Dave Murray and I'll say, man, there won't be 35,000 people here next week. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it for all of us. But I think it's important for us to understand as we get ready to begin the second half that we are improving and the records and the numbers reflect that. We're not great. We're better. I think we're bordering on good, maybe even pretty good. Yeah. And so when I begin to think about what's left the rest of the way, we talked about some of those defensive numbers, I think we're going to have an opportunity to go put some points on the board. Now, there are some years you wish you could pick your schedule a little bit better. But the reality of it is in this league, anybody can beat anybody. I'm not breaking any news when I say that. But, based on what you know right now, on how you feel 6 weeks in. And I don't know how you're going to feel come Sunday, because this time last week we felt really good about beating Florida, maybe not so much about Texas, and I think that's kind of flipped. But we're going to be at Florida in 2 weeks. 3:15, SEC Network, looking forward to going. Then we get Texas in here. Now, based on what you've seen from Texas, again, they got preseason number 1 to non-ranked. And Sarkisian out there yesterday saying, well, who else in the league or who else in the country has gone and played Ohio State and played Florida in the swamp? And I get that aspect of it, but you're paid to win those games. I would venture to say that most of us are probably a little more optimistic about beating Texas than we were a month ago. We're going to go to Arkansas. We don't even know what Arkansas is going to look like when we get there. They fired the defensive staff. They fired Sam Pittman. You're going to have a lot of people on that staff that are hoping Bobby gets a job. There's some other people in the donorship at Arkansas that don't want him to get the job. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. Of course, Petrino, of course, is auditioning to get his old job back. So they're going to do their very best. Petrino is not going through the motions here, thinking about showcasing for the next gig. He's trying to get that one. So we're going to see their best shot. But defensively, they've been terrible. Terrible. Then we get Georgia coming in here. And listen, Georgia, from a talent standpoint, is much better than us. You know what? They were in 2010, and we beat them, too. Then we got to go to Missouri, and, of course, Ole Miss comes in. But, you start thinking, well, maybe you win a couple. I think, there's a possibility you win 3. But, listen, I know what it would mean to this fan base and this program just to go to any bowl game, right? To have a chance to have a winning season again. All of a sudden you start thinking about season tickets next year. Guys, it has been a long 3 years at Mississippi State. Long 3 years. And for many of you, you're just like, you know what, guys, I'm not going to go up there. There's some people that didn't even renew their season tickets, and they said, I'll just jump back in next year. That's important to understand too. And speaking of tickets, I want to address this now. If you're thinking about coming to Texas, go ahead and buy your tickets. If you were one of those people, and there were a bunch of you that took my picture and other pictures, of course, of Tennessee kind of taking over the east side over there, you can take steps to prevent that. You can buy some tickets. You can buy some tickets. And, again, I know everybody wants a deal. I get it. I want a deal, too. I want to keep as much of my money as I possibly can. But you can get, just about every one of our remaining home games has the potential to be a sellout. But I'm looking right now at Texas. And you remember what Georgia did when they came in here a couple years ago? I'm looking right now at hellstate.com tickets. And a bunch of you, of course, blamed the faculty. Wasn't just the faculty. Wasn't. But let's just take, let's go, we'll go section 20, which is basically right there on the 50-yard line. And I'm going to count these, okay? I'm going to count them. There's 4 right there together on row 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. About 60 tickets in that one section on the 50-yard line on the east side. And you can go all up and down that lower bowl on the east side, and you can see that there's a ton of tickets that are still available through hellstate.com, not through SeatGeek or not through StubHub, right through hellstate.com, and you can buy a lot of less tickets. And maybe you don't want to say, Steve, I can't sit in lower bowl. Well, that's fine. You can get tickets starting at $37 for this ball game. There are tickets available on the west side and the east side in the upper levels and in the lower bowls. So if you are planning to come to Texas and Georgia or the Egg Bowl, go ahead and buy your tickets. If not, you're going to pay more than you should, or you're going to watch somebody else take over our stadium. And so I encourage you now. It is an open date. Maybe you're not thinking about football, and maybe you're thinking, well, I'll just buy them in 2 weeks. No, you don't need to wait. Because what happens if we somehow beat Florida? Well, then all of a sudden it's going to be a bigger ticket. You're going to pay more. Go ahead and be proactive. And you know what? Maybe if you can't come to all 3 games, you just pick one of those. Go ahead and secure your tickets through hellstate.com tickets. Go to single game tickets and you can buy them now. And again, we don't play a game for 3 weeks. But if you wait, and we traditionally do, if you wait until the week of the game, the Texas folks are going to snatch those tickets up. Now, I'm not sure how motivated they're going to be to come. If they lose to Oklahoma, there's a lot of people already kind of off the bandwagon this year, and maybe some people that were thinking they're going to come for the novelty of it because they've never seen Texas play at Mississippi State. It's only happened, I guess, one time, in the modern era. So be mindful of that. Don't wait. Go ahead and get it now. And again, if you were embarrassed about Tennessee buying so many tickets on the east side, then you need to go buy some tickets now. And even if you can't use them, gift them to somebody else that you know is going to wear maroon and white. I'm telling you now, I'm giving you a 3-week head start. There are plenty of tickets available on both the west and the east side. You have an opportunity to get some great tickets and not have to deal with all the embarrassment that went along with that last thing. All right, time for today's Close with Blair Player of the Day. Blair Chandler is the only name to know in mortgage loan origination. 25 years in the industry. Nobody stays in any industry that long by accident. He knows how to get things done. Let me give you Blair's number. Save this number in your phone as Mortgage Guy. You can get the pleasantries down later. 601-500-2344. 601-500-2344. I'm saving you a lot of homework, right, and saving you a lot of trouble. Maybe you're not in a position to buy now, but you will be buying soon. This is one thing to take off your checklist, is you know who can get you to the closing table when so many others can't. He can get you the best deal possible. Visit the website closewithblair.com, whether you're looking for your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, or perhaps that game day condo, which could prove to be more affordable than you think. Blair's expertise and know-how are basically your weapons, in life. Blair Chandler, closewithblair.com. Our Close with Blair player of the day is going to be Fluff Bothwell. We don't know how long he's going to be out. We know he's going to be out at least 2 weeks, maybe a month. We just, we don't know. You never know how people are going to respond to treatment. I know Fluff well enough to know he wants to get back on the football field. I was told Sunday mobility was a bit of an issue, but he was much better on Monday. Still a noticeable limp. Tuesday, I was told, still making progress, but still in the boot. And so a lot of that's just to kind of immobilize that joint, give him an opportunity to heal. We have some very talented people and experienced people involved with Mississippi State's strength and conditioning program, as well as the medical side. So we are very optimistic of Fluff making a return this year. I don't know when it's going to be, and I don't know when or if he's going to be 100% this year, but he's a monster, and we need him. If State's going to get bowl eligible, we need Fluff to be a part of that. And I think maybe, if he sits against Florida, and I expect that to be the case at this point, maybe it gives you an opportunity to get some other people some work, get him healthy, but also get some experience. But in many respects, I think Fluff Bothwell is the key to Mississippi State earning bowl eligibility. So that's our Close with Blair player of the day, Fluff Bothwell. All right, time for today's top 10 list as we consider our continue our open date themed top 10 list. We did open chords on Monday. We're going to do songs with open in the title. Top 10 list always brought to you by CalidoGuitars.com. That's CALIDO Guitars.com. I've had a couple people hit me up asking for the link. I'm always happy to provide that. Thrilled with my instrument from Calido Guitars. Absolutely thrilled. I've wanted a Steve Vai signature guitar since I was 16 years of age. I'm not 16 anymore, but sometimes I feel like it. When I've got that great guitar in my hands, you owe it to yourself. Give yourself something to feel good about in life. And if you're looking maybe to be, maybe the person of significance, in somebody's life, and I don't just mean that romantically, but one of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you got a new player in your life or somebody that aspires to be a guitar player, you can find everything that you need at Calido Guitars. You can get guitars for beginners, get intermediate, maybe you just want to step it up a little bit, or maybe you're a professional and you want a professional grade guitar. You can find guitars of all quality and all experience levels at Calido Guitars. Stop by their showroom in Lake Jackson, Texas, next time you're in the greater Houston, Texas area, and you can see for yourself. Visit them online. Make your purchase over the phone. No matter how you want to do business, we've got a promo code that works well for you. It's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping. That gets you a 10% discount. That gets you no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas. And they make a 5% donation to the Bulldog Excellence Fund just by using that promo code. That triggers a lot of great things for you and for Mississippi State. They don't just carry guitars. It's basically a full-stringed instrument operation down there. Visit their website, KalidoGuitars.com. That's C-A-L-I-D-O Guitars.com. All right, today's top 10 list is top 10 songs with open in the title, because it is an open date. It is not a bye, right? We discussed that before. It is a part of the regular season schedule, so it's an open date. A bye, of course, is for tournaments. You don't have to play this round, so you get a bye. Kind of drilling that in this week. So here we go. Top 10 songs with open in the title. These are all rock songs. A lot of country songs out there with open. A lot of R&B songs with open. Some rap songs with open. But top 10 rock songs with open in the title. Number 10, a band that you guys enjoyed, and maybe you didn't dig too deep in the catalog. I wouldn't say they were a one-hit wonder, but probably 2, maybe 3 hits, depending on your point of view. But it's Eve 6. And one of our friends that works with 247 Sports, his best friend was a guitar player at Eve 6. Yeah, 2 degrees of separation. We're going to go with Open Road Song. It's one I think you'll have some fun with. My favorite Eve 6 song, it's Promise. Love that one. Number 9, it's Stained. Open Your Eyes. There's a lot of that on this list, too. A lot of eye-opening type tracks. You guys, many of you know the guys in Stained are very open about their own political beliefs, and they're not always the most popular political beliefs. I respect everybody's political beliefs, even if I don't agree with them. I think everybody in this country should have the right to say and redress their government as they choose, whether you're supportive of it or non-supportive of it. But, yeah, the guys in Stained are very open about it. Number 8, if you're looking for some really heavy rock, this is a band, I think they're out of Detroit, I think. It's the Amity Affliction. We're going to go Open Letter. And so if you like the heavy, aggressive, new brand of thrash with kind of that screaming vocal, this is the band for you. The Amity Affliction, Open Letter at number 8. Number 7, one of my favorite songs from a band that, again, many consider kind of a one-hit wonder, and I don't know that that's fair, but you guys know Living Color because of Cult of Personality, which is phenomenal. Vernon Reid, an incredible guitar player. I think Vernon really shines on this one off that Vivid album. It's Open Letter to a Landlord. And it kind of starts out a little bit bluesy, and then it turns into a great rock song. And I think it's a tremendous song. Number 6, a band that I saw at Bon Fett in Baton Rouge years ago. They were great, too. Great. It's the band Tonic. And many of you guys know them. A lot of relationship-type tracks. One of the more up-tempo tracks in our catalog, it's Open Up Your Eyes. Great song. And Tonic's a great band. Number 5, a band that kind of got new life with a new generation due to a television commercial with The Final Countdown. We're going Europe, Open Your Heart. Superstitious, all that stuff's great. Open Your Heart's a great track, too. Europe is a band, too, that is still selling out arenas in Europe. I don't think we've seen them in the U.S. in a while. They've done a couple of these rock cruises and things like that. But Joey Tempest, an amazing vocalist, a guy obviously that had the corporate look. But Key Marcello, the guitar player in Europe, was phenomenal, in the words of Ben Howland. Absolutely phenomenal. Number 4, and another guy that we lost too soon, it's Tom Petty. A song that a lot of people know, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's Into the Great Wide Open at number 4 on your list. Number 3, one of my favorite bands of all time. I got a chance to see them with Monster Truck down in Mobile, Alabama. It was a theater show, and we loved it, man. We absolutely loved it. Love Miles Kennedy. I think he is the best, or probably the top 2 vocalist of this new era of music. I would say maybe this millennium in rock music. Of course, Alter Bridge basically is Creed with a different singer, with Miles Kennedy, who was with the Mayfield 4 for a while. That stuff wasn't quite as good, and I do like the solo stuff, but not as well is the Alter Bridge stuff. I just think Mark Tremonti and Miles Kennedy work really well together as a songwriting unit. Our gateway track to Alter Bridge, and a lot of these songs were written for Creed. And then Scott Stapp and those guys kind of had a falling out. And so a lot of these songs were already ready and kind of written in a Creed vein. And then Miles Kennedy joins the band. It's Open Our Eyes. And incredible track. And then, of course, things began to change with Alter Bridge on Blackbird because Miles Kennedy was more involved in the songwriting process. Of course, we've got a new Alter Bridge single out. We have a new album coming out around first of the year. But I dig Alter Bridge, man. They're one of the most significant bands of my lifetime. And when I got ready to write When the Bottom Falls, one of the titles that I considered was the title of an Alter Bridge song off that debut album, One Day Remains. It's Down to My Last. And there's some double entendre, down to my last drink, down to my last chance. There's a lot to that. And then ultimately we decided to change it. Just one of those, one of those things. But, the original title of that book was from Candlebox. And it was kind of a borrowed lyric of sorts that I kind of changed to be my own. And the publisher decided that it was too long. But the original title to When the Bottom Falls was I Live With What I Know. And that's, of course, kind of a take on second verse of Left Behind. So there you go. Always something music related. Number 2, arguably the greatest love song written in my lifetime. And the live performance of this, and you can find several of them on YouTube. They're out there. Journey in the early 80s. And you get a real appreciation for Steve Perry. A lot of these people today, like we talked about this, Robbie Falk and I were talking about this just yesterday at a baseball scrimmage. Like those guys in the 70s, they could really play. Right? It wasn't like, okay, we track drums or we track guitar. They would get into a room and they would basically play it live. And so then, if something was wrong, they'd have to recut. And so, of course, you could do some overdubs and things like that. But Journey was one of those bands kind of from the beginning, too, that they could pull it off live. There are a lot of bands today where you do a lot of manipulation on the vocal. You do a lot of computer generation and even some AI stuff to kind of get the composition exactly where you want. But bands like Journey were able to do it in the studio and do it live. And in some respects, I would say that Neil Schon and Steve Perry and those guys were a better live band than they were a studio band. But we're going to go with Open Arms, which, again, is just incredibly beautiful. And if you haven't listened to it in a while, I'd encourage you to put it back on. But number 1, we mentioned Creed a little bit earlier. And we're going to go with this one merely because of what it means. It's Creed's With Arms Wide Open. It's when Scott Stapp had found out he was going to be a dad, and he had all these emotions and stuff, and said he hoped that his kid wouldn't be like him. And it is a very, very emotional song, and I like to find music that just kind of resonates with me. And when this song came out in 1996, I was a new father. Our first son was stillborn, and then we had Ani, and I wrote about that earlier today, and I was like, I think I poured enough love into him to stop wars. I mean, and that may sound like a bit of an exaggeration or hyperbole, but I absolutely loved that kid. And I still do. Not a kid anymore, but I don't know that anybody had been loved more than him. A lot of people maybe as much, but you know what I'm saying. You learn to love your capacity. It's like when you meet your significant other and you decide to start a life together and you start a family, it's like, you begin to wonder about the heart's capacity for love. Like, how in the world could I love anybody more than a person that I share my life with? Well, then you have a child together and you find out that you've never loved anybody more than you love your own child. And then I began to worry, when we got pregnant later on and we had Audrey, I just thought to myself, how in the world do I split the amount of love I have for Ani with another child? Well, it's different. It's a love of its own. And so the more people you have to love, the greater capacity you have to love. And I think that's one of the things that's very important about life. And I'm a person at times that has been maybe difficult to love, kind of like hugging a cactus, I can be prickly at times. I know this. I do. I think I've matured some over the years, but the thing that I know is there is nothing better than being loved. Nothing. There's nothing better than being loved. And I'm a person that always didn't receive love exceptionally well. There are times that compliments make me uncomfortable. And that's a security issue within myself, right? That's not you, right? But I can tell you when I was writing When the Bottom Falls, it was extremely emotional. And there were times that I decided to stop. I thought, I just need to take a break from this. And then I would take like a day, and I wrote the whole thing in like 26 days. But I would uncover and kind of pull away some old scabs, and some old wounds would be exposed, and I didn't like it. And it made me very uncomfortable. But one of the things that I learned by that book writing process, going back and kind of remembering those things, those low points in life, it has about how many people stood up for me, people that really loved me. And when you kind of consider the cathartic nature of a working project like that, it gives you a chance to kind of conduct an autopsy of the life that you've left behind. And you begin to realize there were some people that were there all along. And there were some people that were just kind of tourists in your life that maybe had a purpose to serve. And they showed up and they fulfilled their part of the mission. And then they left the path. Life took them in a different direction. But I was very grateful to kind of go back. And one of the things that I did is all these names that pop up to me, I went and found them all on social media. I said, dude, I want to make sure you know this. I'm writing this book, and I've written about you. Whether you want to get a copy of the book or not, doesn't make any difference to me. But I just wanted to tell you thank you for being there for me when I had some difficult times. And I remember the fun times we had too. But when I needed you most, you were there. And I sent a bunch of those messages, and it led to a bunch of phone calls and a chance to kind of catch up. And the thing that I learned from that is, as great as it felt for me to write that to them, something of meaning, something of real importance, is understanding the gift I was giving them. Like, when's the last time that somebody just hit you up and say, man, I just want to let you know, years ago when I was at the bottom, you helped keep me going. I don't think we do that enough. And I thought it was important for those people to know that I loved them. And maybe I didn't show it as much as I should have when back in those days. I was a sick person in 91. I can promise you that. I was a very sick person. And maybe I didn't have the words. I didn't have the capacity to express my love, respect, and admiration for people. And I've heard about that before. If I told you I loved you in 91, I didn't mean it. If you were a female, I was just trying to get you to enjoy some time with me. I didn't know what love was. It was just a word. But I think that's the thing that maturity gives you, is you can look back in hindsight and realize that love helped pave the way through some of the most difficult times of your life. And there are so many people that helped me that had nothing to gain. Nothing. They did it because they cared about me. And I don't know that I had said thank you before. And so it was really rewarding to be able to go back now and look at the totality of my own life and say, hey, you played a part in this. I would not be here where I am today if it weren't for you. And here's some things about that time in my life that maybe you didn't know. Maybe some things you did for me that you didn't think were very impactful, but they were. As I'm telling you now, I don't want to leave this life without telling you thank you. And I encourage people to give flowers whenever they can. And I don't just mean the kind you get from the florist. I mean telling somebody what you really think about them, and telling somebody what they've meant to you, and telling people how much you appreciate them. We have enough things in life tearing us down. It's up to each other for us to build each other up. Because all you got to do is go log on to social media and find out that you don't have the popular opinion. You get on Facebook and you can write something very poignant. You can and somebody will find fault with it, right? And it's incredible how that's the voice you hear, right? I mean, you can have 100 people comment and 99 people tell you that they agree or it's great, but there's that one person, that says something, and it's completely okay for them to disagree. And it is completely okay for us to have opposing viewpoints. But when people say things sometimes out of malice, it bothers us. I've got thicker skin than most. But I'm human. There are times it gets to me too. But I just log off and move on with my day. I'll go call my kids and FaceTime them and say, hey, let me see my grandkids. You got to do what matters most in life. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out, let us know. Roy Samanthi is wrapping up a bit of a holiday in New York City. Can't hide money. And it says he has a lengthy layover coming up, and he's going to get caught up on our top 10 list, headed over to Spotify. You can follow Roy on X at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67. And you can find our great list on Spotify under that same handle. Of course, I'm on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution, a place that we know and love so much. Yeah, because they have what we want. We can't get enough Mississippi State merchandise, whether it be apparel, gift ideas, everything you need to fill out your fan cave, you can find at Campus Bookmart. Miss Kathy Brown does an amazing job finding all the Mississippi State merchandise that you want. Look no further than Campus Bookmart when you need Mississippi State merchandise. Stop by and see them the next time you're in town. Very easy to find. Turn off 182 at the Trooper Station and just mosey on around, and right on the left-hand side before you turn on the campus is Campus Bookmart. If you can't make it to town and perhaps you'd like to support a Starkville business, we're always in favor of that. Hit them up at campusbookmart.net. You can peruse all their fine selections there and find something for yourself. And Mom, I don't want to make you panic, but Christmas is just about 2 months away. Go ahead and begin your shopping now. You can be that mom this year. You can. I know it's fun to wait to the last minute. It is, but it'd be nice to go ahead and get a few people taken care of on your Christmas list. Probably make for a better Christmas if you can spread out the expense a little bit too. So visit campusbookmart.net and order some Mississippi State merch. Promo code BSR gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Okay. Years and years ago, it seems, we began to talk about the NCAA transfer portal. Now, you may have forgotten, but the portal was launched way back in 2018. And there were some restrictions back then. And then we kind of went through the wild, wild west. Back in 2021, and they kind of paired that up with NIL compensation, which made for a very interesting recruiting landscape, because then you could transfer, have immediate eligibility, and you could receive NIL funding to do so. And then things began to change where then you could transfer as much as you wanted to. There was also these rules in place back then where you could enter the transfer portal whenever you wanted to. Every single day, coaches were always fearful of that. You couldn't really coach kids. Sometimes you got to get on somebody. You do. That's part of coaching. Sometimes somebody messes up in practice and you've got to take corrective action. There are some people out there that have never had anybody hold them accountable. And all of a sudden, they begin to feel like maybe they're better off somewhere else. They get embarrassed. Their feelings get hurt. So they just go run and get in the portal. Then we took a step towards sanity when we set up transfer windows. This happened back in 2022. It was after the spring window. It was before the beginning of the 2022 college football season. So we set up portal windows. So then all of a sudden you didn't have a 365-day hostage situation. Now, at the end of the season and the end of the spring semester, student athletes could go in. And if you remember, the winter window was basically 15 days, and then you had 45 days after championships. There was a lot to it, right? But anyway, it felt like, hey, we're in a pretty good spot here. We could do okay. It's better. Everybody gets a chance at the end of the semester. Well, now the NCAA has decided, hey, we've talked to the membership, and I can tell you, speaking to our own coaches and other coaches around the Southeastern Conference, there was a lot of people back in the spring. They were like, we probably should do away with the spring transfer portal window. We have. And so now, if you're going to transfer or enter the portal, you do so one time a year. Now, even in the event that you have some academic work to do, you can still enter the portal. You're still going to be able to add transfer portal prospects post-spring, because not everybody that enters in December in the winter window is going to have a chance to find a school. It's going to take some time, right? There's going to be things that happen. But we have really taken some steps since that wild year of 2022 to kind of get some guardrails about this. There has to be some protection for the schools. As we've seen in the last 2 years, there have been some student athletes that are represented by some agents. At times it could be a little bit unscrupulous. So they would have a young man transfer in December to a new school, get paid, and then transfer to a different school in the spring, post-spring, and get paid again. Now, I don't think that helps the student or the athlete, because of the fact you never know if all your classes are going to transfer. You don't know if all this is going to be applicable towards a degree. In addition to that, you don't have the benefit of spring practice. You don't have a chance to learn all the defensive schemes, the offensive playbook, and it could put you behind on the depth chart. So now the majority of these student athletes that will go into the portal will have the benefit of spring practice at a new school. That is a great thing. I'm sure some people will challenge this, which they always tend to do, but nobody is infringing upon anybody's, quote, rights to transfer. Everybody has the ability to transfer and have immediate eligibility. Everybody has the ability to get NIL compensation. Nobody is really being infringed upon here. One of the things that I thought would be good is if we have one window in December, and then you would allow some grad transfers post-spring, because some guys may need to go out there and finish up some academic work in order to achieve and earn their degree at their previous school. Well, that stipulation is not part of it now. It's not. It should be, but it's not. But the reality of it is everybody, again, has said, oh, I hate the portal, I hate the portal, I hate the portal, I hate the portal. Well, there's good and bad in the portal. The portal give it, the portal take it. There's some guys that went in the portal. A lot of times it's our decision or their departing school's decision, and guys kind of get processed out, and they got to go find somewhere else to play and get their education. Not everybody that goes into the portal is chasing money. They'd love to have it, but a lot of them have not put enough on tape to facilitate a nice payday. And that's the first thing you see. We saw it this week with some of these recruits that were processed out of the class. People say, oh, it's all about money. Well, no, it's not. It's not. Not everybody commands a big payday. And it's interesting that people that do not know them, have never had any interaction with them, choose to assign motive. I can promise you that the majority of the players that hit the NCAA transfer portal from Mississippi State last year, there were some exceptions, but by and large, most of them were encouraged to get into the portal and find playing opportunities elsewhere. That's the truth. You may not like it, but that's the truth. And it's Jeff Lebby's responsibility to put a winning team on the field, and if that means that he has to free up some scholarship spots in order to do so, to bring in the players that make a difference, then that's how it has to be. And that's important to understand. Now that this is done, and this has been something that we have expected to happen for months now, now the next thing on the horizon, of course, is the 5-year eligibility rule. And that's a lawsuit. And that's the first thing everybody says, too. Listen, I'm no huge fan of the NCAA. But sometimes the NCAA shoulders the burden of things that are beyond their control. This is one of them. Back on September 1st or 2nd, I guess it was the 2nd, there was a lawsuit filed to get 5 years of eligibility. Like right now, you have 4 years or 5 years to play 4. You get 5 years of eligibility, including a redshirt year, and you can play up to 4 games, which was good legislation, right? Now they want to do 5 full years of eligibility. We don't know what that means for the redshirt rule. Does it basically just say, you know what, the redshirt rule is gone, but if you play more than 4 games, you still got 4 years of eligibility to play. So originally, again, it was a 5-year limit, but only one of those years, or I guess 4 of those years, could be considered, full varsity years. And so that also kind of pairs up a little bit with the Diego Pavia lawsuit about the junior college years. Like some people were suggesting, hey, those junior college years should not count against your 4 years of eligibility because it's a different governing institution. It's an interesting discussion, right? So theoretically, if those years don't count, and then you'd have 5 years of eligibility at the next level, you could have some very older players, very mature physically players, playing against some guys that are very young. What I suspect, and this is just my opinion, I think ultimately there will be a compromise of sorts to kind of get both issues handled at the same time. It's like, okay, we're gonna give everybody 5 years of eligibility. And so if you played in junior college, right, one of those years is going to count against your clock. I think that's what will happen. I truly believe there will be a compromise of sorts to address both issues. It's 2 different lawsuits. Ironically, both of them originally filed by Vanderbilt players. You can kind of do the math from there. But the reality of it is the 5 years of eligibility, I think, is probably a good thing. They're already there for 5 years anyway. Most of them. And now they get the ability to play and not, burn a redshirt year and still have 4 years of eligibility. I think that's probably a good thing. Again, they're already on the scholarship rolls for 5 years by and large. So it's not more money. But what it does mean is there are less recruiting opportunities and scholarship opportunities for high school players. Now, eventually it will adjust. Once we get 5-6 years into this thing, it'll be a little bit better. But what we're seeing now, and Mississippi State has chosen to kind of make the move now, which is the smart thing to do, you're going to have to cut some high school guys. And I think really at the end of the day, and opinions may vary on this, but a lot of high school players probably should go to junior college first anyway. And there are a lot of guys out there that are quote, developmental. They're going to develop more at junior college by getting actual game reps. And I get it. The level of competition is not the same. And there's the argument, too, well, they would probably do better in a Division I weight room and nutrition program and all that. But you're talking 1 year as opposed to 2. But everybody is having to make some roster adjustments, and whether that be of your current high school recruiting class, if that means your returning roster, do you encourage more guys to get in the portal? Everybody is having to take some steps to properly manage the roster limitations going forward. And what Mississippi State has decided to do is, I think 4 guys have gone public. I think there's one more that's coming. It may happen today, who knows. But the reality of it is it's about winning football games. That's what we hired Jeff Lebby to do. Now, Jeff Lebby picked up the phone on Monday, made phone calls to a handful of guys and said, hey, here's the situation. They're going to be having this new 5-for-5 thing. We're not going to have the spots that we would have had before because all of a sudden, the redshirt years are going to be part of the eligibility. And, it's a complicated conversation. And it's a difficult conversation. But it's better to have that conversation in October than in December. And there will be some guys that'll be looking, they'll get dropped right before the December signing period, whether that be late November, early December. They will not have the benefit of being able to take official visits to other places. And then the schools that maybe they did visit may not have a spot for them. Roster spots for high school players are going to be much more limited this year, maybe perhaps more than they ever have been. And so by doing this now, and for Jeff Lebby making the call himself rather than letting some low-level staffer do it, and all those staffers are important. But when you get a call from the head coach, you kind of understand it's a no BS zone, right? The head coach is calling you. He thinks enough of you to call you and say, hey, man, here's our situation. We want to cut you loose now to give you October and November to take visits, and we're happy to help you find a landing spot. That is the way to do it. That is the way to have ethics. And again, I think that speaks well of Jeff Lebby. It would be very easy, just have somebody shoot the coach a text and say, hey, coach, we're not going to be able to take so-and-so, and this is why. But Jeff Lebby manned up and had these conversations directly with those players. I respect it, and I commend him for handling it. I'm sure it was not a lot of fun because you've spent the better part of the last year getting to know these players and their families, and then all of a sudden at 17 years of age you find out the school you chose is having to drop you. Then you got to tell your coach, and then you got to deal with your friends, and you got to deal with your family, and it's difficult. It is. And there are no winners in that situation. There's really not. That's important to understand. College athletics is a business. A lot of these young people, don't have a lot of options because of the fact that, Mississippi State gets a kid that's committed from an in-state school, and a lot of schools would say, well, we're not going to beat an in-state SEC school, so they go take other players. And so the options you had in June, you may not have in October. Now, you may play your way into some more. That's always a possibility. But you don't give a guy much of a chance when you wait and do it in December. Senior film is out there, and as far as other schools go, they think, hey, well, that kid's going to be with this school, so we don't need to, take him off our board. And then all of a sudden, guys are scrambling. We went through this whole thing years ago. We had the young man, of course, who was committed to Mississippi State out of Byhalia. Flipped to Ole Miss, and then on signing day, scholarship paper didn't show up, and they're having a scramble, and he ends up landing at Memphis and eventually transferred back to Mississippi State. But a coach and a player and a family should not have to go through that at the last minute. Again, these are never, ever, ever great conversations, as you could imagine. But having them now is the more merciful way to do it. We went through this with Dan Mullen years ago. And I can't remember the quarterback. Cason Virgil, that's his name. He had a quarterback. And he was going to be an early enrollee. And what made this the worst, and of course he was getting hyped up by some of our walk-on recruiting experts. He was a dink and dunk guy, right? And he couldn't really run the football. We had him come to Big Dog Camp. And it was obvious at Big Dog Camp that he wasn't going to be our guy. It was obvious. But we decided to wait. And then we went during the open evaluation period, and we went and watched him, and he kind of confirmed. And I say we, Mississippi State went, Brian went, and Brian Johnson, went to go watch him. And it was apparent then this is not going to work out. We should have told him then, but we didn't. We waited at the very end, and then we told them, and we got blasted in the national media. Not that I care a whole lot about that. But at the end of the day, we put that young man in a difficult position. And we got blistered for it, and Dan Mullen and the staff deserve to be criticized for it. And listen, I get it. You want to support the staff, and you're like, hey, this is, hey, it's about winning. Dan Mullen's got to make the best decisions possible for this football program. But when we've already known for months that he wasn't the guy, we should have communicated that to him better. That's why I respect the way this is being handled. We've had some years in the past that we've had to call kids later in the process and say, hey, we're not going to have a spot for you. It's difficult. But as soon as you know, you should let them know. That is just the right thing to do. It's not about saving face. It's about allowing young men to have opportunities to continue their recruitment elsewhere. That's all part of the gig. But, we've had 4 guys so far, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can because I want to be respectful of everybody involved. Most of these guys were questionable takes to begin with. And I think that's important to kind of understand, Our 5th one hasn't gone public yet. But, Tamario Johnson out of Pascagoula, he's a kid I like a lot. He only had the 1 year of football, and all of a sudden he's on our radar. We take him, and with our emergent needs at safety, with so many guys leaving at the end of the year, we're probably going to have to go get in the portal. And we knew that when we committed that kid. But we didn't know that this 5-year thing was going to be passed this year and probably impact the 2026 roster. But some of these other guys, like Maurice Jones, is a guy, he wanted to commit to us before he even came on his visit. And that says a little bit about his options. I mean, he's from Dr. Phillips High School in Orlando, Florida. So he plays at a good high school program. But when out-of-state kids that don't have ties to us want to commit kind of sight unseen, it tells me there's not a lot of great options for them. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And Maurice is really more of a, I don't know, I think he's a G5 guy, right? And I kind of felt the same way about Caleb Tremplett out of D'Iberville. He's an explosive player. He hasn't played much this year. But, he's a guy that's more of a tackle-to-tackle, kind of an old-school Mike, an old-school middle linebacker that can fit gaps. But against today's spreads and the wide splits that we have out there, I don't know. I don't know how he fits. So, there's a handful of these guys, of course, and it's, like Charles, man, the offensive lineman out of Beard, and, he's a guy that has wanted to commit to us for the better part of 2 years and wanted to commit to Cody Kennedy, and, he was at everything. And you hate that when a guy kind of falls in love with a place and then there's a coaching change and maybe the new coach doesn't share the evaluation of the previous position coach, but you end up taking him. And then when you got to go trimming, that's going to be where the guy, you're going to go trim the guy that maybe is not, quote, your guy. But I hate it for these young people. But again, I commend Jeff Lebby for doing it now and giving these young people plenty of opportunities to reopen their recruitment and to find some other opportunities to further their education and their athletic playing careers. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle when you're bringing a large group to town. That's right, it's the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. We've stayed there and had a ball. Plenty of parking, plenty of amenities to take care of you and your guests. You get the full-service kitchen, the wet bar, that huge back porch area, the fire pit area, 6 bedrooms, 2 bath, everything you need to just kind of get together and have some fun. Yeah, 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. It's out past the Highlands off 182. Very easy to get to, so conveniently located to everywhere you want to be in Starkville. As I've mentioned, we stayed there, and my mom even recently reached out and said, hey, we were going to do that again. Well, yes, we are. Yeah, we are. Don't know when, but we are. And so I share that with you because you need to think maybe it's getting towards the end of the year. Got some vacation time I need to use. Maybe a midweek trip to Starkville to check out some basketball would be smart, right? Take a doubleheader. Maybe do it. It's a Tuesday, Wednesday deal. Come be a part of everything here at Humphrey Coliseum. Ball game weekends, as you can imagine, book up very quickly. So you need to be thinking about baseball schedule too. Think about those baseball weekends, and how fun would it be to have everybody together, all your friends, your little circle of all the husbands and wives, everybody together under one roof, and make it easy on yourself. Instead of everybody being scattered all over Oktibbeha County or all over the Golden Triangle, you can just get everybody together, and again, just 5 minutes away from the state campus. Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse. When you do, that Facebook page will auto-populate, and you can peruse all the amenities available to you and your guests, but also some booking options will become available. If you want to book through Airbnb or VRBO, you certainly can. But if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website and use promo code BSR10. That's BSR and the number 10, BSR10, get you 10% off your stay. Isn't that great? You need to be the one to organize this. You've already been thinking about baseball weekends, and you have. Maybe even some basketball weekends, do some shopping up here in the Golden Triangle area. Stop thinking about it and be about it. Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle, bar none. All right, we had some baseball recruiting stuff too. I tell you what's interesting too. Mississippi State, for the class of 2027, we're currently ranked 12. And you'd say, well, Steve, that's not very high. Well, we have 4 commitments, and 3 of the 4 are top 100 players. The average quality points per commitment is 13 for Mississippi State. That leads the nation. Yeah. So Tennessee's already got 10 commitments. 7 of them are top 100. You'd expect that. But they're trailing Mississippi State when it comes, it's not by much, but they are trailing Mississippi State. And what's interesting, some of these guys they've committed did not have offers from Mississippi State. What's interesting about that is the guys that we've committed, 3 of those 4 had offers from Tennessee. I think that's an important thing to understand too. We got to be able to compete against the upper echelon teams in our conference because that's who we are. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown here, kind of what we've added here in the really last 36 hours or so, I guess. I mean, just a great run by Coach Brian O'Connor and the staff there. But here's what you have in 27. You have Fisher Howell, who is the only non-top 100 player, and he is a stud out of Petal. Absolute monster. Plays shortstop, can play third, can play outfield. 6'3", 200-pound switch hitter. Love his game. Well, you picked up catcher Carson Kinnick out of Upland, California. 6'2", 195-pounder. A guy that's played outfield as well. Multi-sport guy. Also has done a little pitching. You'd expect that. And then Sullivan Reed, saw his dad last night at the scrimmage. 6'2", 220-pound third baseman out of Lamar School. Rated as top player in Mississippi this year. And then last evening, Connor Salerno, considered by some to be the top left-handed pitcher in the 2027 class. 6'4", 225 pounds, and played some with the guys that are committed to us. This is a huge, huge get for State. Huge, huge. And people say, well, Steve, what about the draft? Okay, can we stop being self-loathing? Can we stop? Honest to goodness. Brian O'Connor has been the toughest sign in the college game. We're going to lose 1 or 2 every year, yeah, but we're not going to lose as many as everybody else. And but that's because of how you recruit them in the first place. You recruit them with that in mind, and you begin to sell them on the developmental plan. You look at this 2026 class, and, spoken to so many of these guys who are getting ready to sign. We've made an adjustment here as of late, and that's fine too. But I think what you're going to see is State probably focusing on about 10 kids every year and then go work in the portal. I don't think it's going to be, you're going to go crazy every year in the portal. And that's one thing Brian O'Connor has said from the beginning is you have to have a strong nucleus, guys that are with you 2 to 3 years. So this 2026 class is kind of a collaborative effort, right? But when you begin to kind of work through this, it's not a highly rated class. When you think about, the actual colleges, how the rankings kind of work out. I believe 11 is where we are. I'm double checking right now, just because I want to give you guys accurate information. I believe it's 11th. If I can toggle over there for you. Let's see here. Yeah, and looking at points here. Yeah, so, we're farther back than that. We're actually 20. And that's with 11. So top 20 class, and if that's not where we're going to stay. Vanderbilt, the top recruiting class in the conference and in the country, and then followed by OSU, Texas, Tennessee, Florida. And again, that's a year that we made some changes. And, of course, there are probably some players who were kind of hesitant to jump on board with us because of the instability around our program. But all that understood, we're right where we need to be. The fact that we only have 4 commitments and that we're right there pushing the top 10 says a lot about the quality of the guys we have, and we're just getting started. Just getting started. And I think that you guys are going to be happy with what you're seeing because we talked about this last night at the scrimmage. We look like what you'd expect an SEC program to look like. You got some dudes out there. You got some pro-style bodies out there, and that's what you're recruiting now too in 27. And we'll add 1 or 2 in 26. Of course, we just picked up Harlan Hoveder, catcher from Meridian Community College. He will be a 26 guy. He'll spend this year at Meridian and then come in next year. Be here in the summer. All that's important too. So we're still maybe fine-tuning the 26 class, but we're going to be all over 27 here in the weeks to come. And so that's something that kind of we spend a lot of time covering that over Gene's page. We really work the phones trying to get you guys information about this. But really, I said all that to say this. In my lifetime, which gets longer by the day, when I was a kid and we had, Bruce Castoria coming in here from New York, we had Rafael Palmeiro coming in from Miami, Florida. We were a national recruiter, but we were one of very few national recruiters. Texas got some guys, USC got some guys, but, Ron Polk showed up and just said, hey, we're going to recruit on a national level. We're going to be a national program. We had the greatest environment in college baseball. So Coach benefited from expanding the recruiting footprint, but also, too, he benefited from the fact that we were so far ahead of everybody from a facility standpoint. And then, of course, Coach leaves, comes back, and I'm going to be honest about this, and I think most of us that are honest with ourselves will admit this. We kind of tried to ride the mystique of Dudy Noble Field longer than we should have. And, of course, we needed to modernize our approach to recruiting. So we bring John Cohen in. Now, John absolutely changed the way we recruit. And I love Pokey to death. I'm not being critical of Pokey at all, but things had changed. There was a time in Mississippi that every kid, whether they grew up a State Ole Miss or Southern Miss fan, wanted to play for Ron Polk in Mississippi State. And they would come to camp, and then Pokey kind of got to pick who he wanted, and then everybody else went elsewhere. And I don't mean that out of arrogance. That's basically how things went. Of course, there were some of those kids that grew up just dreaming of playing for Jay Gibbs at Ole Miss, and they did that. But by and large, Pokey got to pick. Well, then Dan McDonald shows up at Ole Miss and was a relentless recruiter. Bianco and those guys were doing a good job. They were offering kids earlier, and they were getting them committed, so they didn't come to our camps. So Cohen comes in and kind of changes the way we do things. But John didn't have the benefit of the new stadium. Yeah, we did a few things here and there to kind of dress up the old girl. But Ole Miss had built a new ballpark. Auburn had built in Plainsman Park. We were falling behind in facility and game day experience. Not in fan support, but we were falling behind, and we just didn't look like we were as committed to baseball. And so Scott Strickland, everybody gets all the renderings out, and when we first said that we were going to do this, all of our contemporaries said Mississippi State will never build this. When John Cohen became your athletic director, he worked extremely hard to make sure we did that. And brought the greatest cathedral in the history of college baseball to Mississippi State. And then, as John became athletic director, we hired Andy Cannizaro, which in many respects was kind of like a Dan McDonald recruiter. Andy was a great evaluator. Andy was a guy that related well with kids. And we felt like we were on the cusp of some great recruiting success. Well, you know what happened. We hired Chris Simonis, and Chris was known as, being a great recruiter too. And I think Lim did a good job. Obviously, he won a national championship. But, recruiting-wise, I think sometimes we kind of relied too much on the stadium. Now, some of that falls on the staff. Some of that falls on the way we elected to distribute rev share and how we elected to do NIL stuff. Of course, we had some very generous donors, and Charlie Winfield did, yeoman's work on the baseball. And again, when we all get to heaven, Charlie gets to take the escalator when the rest of us walk. But my point being is I don't know that we have seen the recruiting effort and response that we are getting now since those glory days of Polk. Yes, Polk had an administration that was committed. They would let him go get on a plane and fly all over the country to go recruit players. And yes, we had the newer stadium. And we had the Bulldog Sports Radio Network. All of that was important. And I think in some respects, we relied too much on tradition. And we kind of fell behind. And the thing that many of you feel like I feel is that in many respects, on the national landscape, we have underachieved. Yes, we got a bunch of attendance records. I'd rather have national championships. Yeah, it's great. We throw a great party. But my hope is that the after party is at the Blatt outside of the stadium in Omaha. We haven't been to Omaha enough. We haven't won enough national championships. And again, a lot of it is I think, well, they'll just always show up. And the fans always do. But Duty Noble is not enough. The fan support is not enough. We can't let those videos of Elijah McNamee hitting a home run against Stanford be our only recruiting statement. And it's not just about money. It is about money, but not just about money. And I think Brian O'Connor, based on his recruiting approach and his long-term plan for development and getting players to AA and ultimately to the big show quicker, is resonating well with players that have pro potential. So yes, we have the greatest stadium. Yes, we have the best fan support. Yes, we have the most rev share to spend. Those are all great, but those are basically just supporting the commitment we've made to Brian O'Connor to ensure that he has everything he needs. And that was a conversation we had some time ago. I said, man, Coach, you feel like you've got everything you need? He said, I've got everything that anybody would ever need. And I began to think about how he was so restricted at Virginia. Okay, and I'm going to say this. A friend of mine said this yesterday, okay? He said, Steve, before Brian O'Connor got to Virginia, Virginia is basically like the Mississippi State and Kentucky of football in the SEC. They're just a good program. They weren't great. Brian O'Connor didn't have the scholarship money he had at Mississippi State. Brian O'Connor did not have the financial commitment, the facilities. He did not have the full support of the administration behind him. Where did he go to Omaha? Go to 20 NCAA tournaments? And it's become an Omaha mainstay. And so now you've got a guy that has had to do more with less, now have more than he's ever had, in many respects, more than anybody's ever had. Right? And so what I firmly believe is that Mississippi State has the right coach. Mississippi State has the right financial commitment. Mississippi State has the right administration. All the horses are pulling in the same direction when it comes to baseball right now. Listen, I know there's some people out there that are fans of other sports, and that's fine. We are a baseball school, whether you like it or not. But baseball can't pay all the bills. We get that. And pretty soon, baseball will be a lot more self-sufficient when those seat licenses expire, right? But I firmly believe that we're about to go into a different era of baseball at Mississippi State. When we're beating Tony Vitello head-to-head multiple times in classes, we got kids canceling visits to Tennessee because they just want to go ahead and commit to Mississippi State. That is a significant signal to you that things are running in the right direction in Starkville, Mississippi. If you hadn't done so, go to dutynoblebook.com. You can get signed copies of all my sports titles there. That's Flim Flam, Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs, Dog Pile, and of course, The Dude itself. And the personal memoir from When the Bottom Falls is also there as well. Anything ordered through the website gets signed. Come float with us at True West Float Spa of Starkville. You'll be glad you did. Maybe you're a person that just needs a break. Maybe you've got chronic pain or anxiety. We may be able to help you. We've helped many others. You can dial 662-268-7601. Speak directly to my lovely wife, Dana. She can answer any of your questions you may have about floating. She was a registered nurse for most of her adult life, so she is more knowledgeable about maybe some of those things that other people may be. And so you can trust her. I do. And come join us over at genespage.com. Currently running 30% off the annual subscription price. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.